I never thought the day of my grandfather's will reading would shatter my world. My billionaire grandpa, Richard Sullivan, had built an empire of steel and glass towers. Yet when the lawyer opened the folder, my name was tied to nothing but a ruin. To Megan Sullivan, he read, a property in the Colorado mountains, a crumbling house in the middle of nowhere that was my inheritance. Meanwhile, my younger brother Lucas received the grand estate, the businesses, the fortune. The room erupted in whispers, but the loudest voices were my parents. Useless, my mother hissed. Don't come back until you've proven yourself, my father snapped. My heart broke under their scorn, yet something inside me refused to collapse. That night, with only a set of rusty keys and a trembling resolve, I drove toward that forgotten house. I didn't know it then, but opening its door would change everything. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper. I sat at the long mahogany table, my palms clammy, staring at the polished surface as if it might open up and swallow me whole. My brother Lucas leaned back casually in his chair, flashing that confident smirk he had mastered since childhood. My parents sat beside him, their arms crossed, already looking at me like I didn't belong. The lawyer cleared his throat. The estate of Richard Sullivan will now be distributed. His voice was calm, professional, too calm for the storm that was about to hit. He read first for Lucas. To my grandson, Lucas Sullivan, I leave the family estate in Los Angeles, all financial assets, and majority shares in Sullivan Enterprises. Are all lit. I felt the air leave my lungs. Lucas's smirk widened. He even leaned over and whispered, "Guess being the golden child pays off." Then came my turn. To my granddaughter, Megan Sullivan, I leave the property located in Cold Creek, Colorado, including the residence and its contents. Silence. My parents exchanged looks of thinly veiled disappointment. My mother hissed under her breath, "A shack in the mountains?" My father didn't bother to lower his voice. "Richard must have been senile. This is pathetic." Heat rushed to my face. I forced myself to sit straighter, though my chest felt like it was caving in. "That's it?" I asked, my voice trembling. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "Yes, that's the extent of your inheritance." Lucas laughed, sharp and cruel. "Well, Megan, maybe you can redecorate the ruins. Isn't that what you're good at? Making ugly things slightly less ugly?" "Lucas," I snapped, but my words barely carried weight. My parents piled on. "You should be grateful you got anything," my mother said coldly. "But maybe this is fitting. You've never done anything meaningful with your life." The sting of their words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream that I was more than they thought, that I wasn't useless. But the words stuck. When the meeting ended, Lucas strutted out like a king, his arm around my father's shoulder. My mother didn't even look back. I sat frozen in the empty room, clutching the rusty keys the lawyer had placed in my palm. It wasn't just humiliation, it was exile. And yet, as I stared at the keys, something flickered inside me, a stubborn spark. When we returned home that evening, the air inside our Los Angeles house felt colder than the winter air outside. I barely had time to hang up my coat before my father's voice sliced through the silence. "Do you understand how embarrassing today was?" he barked. "Your brother inherits an empire, and you," he jabbed a finger toward me, "you walk away with a broken shack in the middle of nowhere." I swallowed hard. "It's not like I asked for this. Grandpa chose." "Don't you dare blame your grandfather," my mother snapped. Her emerald earrings sparkled as she shook her head. "Richard must have pitied you. He didn't trust you with anything real, so he dumped that ruin on you. Maybe he wanted me to find something there." I tried, my voice thin, uncertain even to my own ears. Lucas laughed from the sofa, sipping soda like he was watching a comedy show. "Yeah, sure. Maybe there's a pot of gold hidden under the rotten floorboards. Don't kid yourself, Megan." "Enough," my father thundered. He stepped closer, his presence looming. "You've been a disappointment for years. No ambition, no achievements, nothing. Your brother fights for what he wants. You," his lip curled, "you've done nothing but take up space." My chest tightened. "That's not fair. You've worked at a little design firm that no one's ever heard of," my mother interrupted, her tone dripping with disdain. "That's not a career. That's a hobby. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them see me break. I'm trying, I whispered. Trying isn't enough, my father spat. From this moment, you're out. Don't come back until you can prove you're worth something. The words echoed like a sentence passed down from a judge. My knees felt weak. You're kicking me out? Lucas whistled low. Wow. Harsh, but honestly overdue. My mother crossed her arms. Pack your things, Megan. Go to that shack in Colorado. If you really want to prove us wrong, start there. Otherwise, don't bother coming back. I wanted to argue, to scream, but my voice failed me. I trudged upstairs, packed a single suitcase, and took the keys from my pocket. The metal felt heavier than any weight I had ever carried. By the time I stepped outside into the night, the door slammed behind me like a final verdict. I was on my own. The highway stretched endlessly before me, a black ribbon cutting through the night. My old sedan groaned with every mile, headlights flickering against the snowy Colorado peaks in the distance. The farther I drove, the more civilization disappeared. Gas stations grew scarce, cell service faded, and eventually, it was just me, the road, and the whisper of the wind through endless pines. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, replaying my parents' words in my head. Useless. Don't come back. Every syllable throbbed like a bruise on my chest. I wanted to cry, but the tears had dried into something harder. Anger, maybe, or determination. By dawn, I turned onto a narrow gravel path. According to the papers, this was it, Cold Creek. The name felt too fitting, as if the town itself promised isolation. The road twisted through thick forest until, finally, the trees parted. There it was. The house. A crooked silhouette against the gray sky. The roof sagged like a tired old man, shingles missing in patches. Vines strangled the wooden siding, and one window was shattered, jagged glass clinging to the frame. A rusted mailbox leaned sideways, the name Sullivan barely legible. My breath caught. This was my inheritance. I pulled up the car and stepped out. The air was sharp and cold, smelling of pine and damp earth. Gravel crunched under my boots as I approached the front porch, which groaned beneath my weight. "Grandpa," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was angry at him or pleading for an explanation. "Why this? Why me?" I slid the rusty key into the lock. It resisted at first, as if the house itself didn't want me inside. I shoved harder, and the door creaked open, releasing a wave of musty air dust, mold, and something older, heavier, like secrets buried for too long. The living room was dim, light filtering through holes in the roof. A broken table slumped near a fireplace filled with ash. Cobwebs draped across corners like forgotten curtains. Every step I took echoed, the floorboards groaning under my weight. I should have felt disappointment, maybe even despair. But instead, curiosity stirred in my chest. There was something about this place, something watching me, whispering through the cracks. Clutching the keys, I moved deeper inside. Little did I know, the house was about to answer me louder than I ever imagined. The deeper I wandered, the more uneasy I felt. The hallway was narrow, the wallpaper peeling in long strips like curling tongues. At the very end stood a door, unlike the others, thicker, heavier, carved with strange patterns. I raised my flashlight. Eagles, suns, and swirling lines danced across the oak, worn but unmistakably deliberate. My pulse quickened. "What are you hiding, Grandpa?" I murmured. I tried the ring of keys, one after another, but none fit. Frustration boiled in my chest. I rattled the handle, shoved my shoulder against it, but the door refused to yield. I almost turned away when I noticed a gap at the bottom corner. Something about it felt wrong. Kneeling, I brushed away dust and discovered a loose wooden panel. My heart thudded. I tugged it free, revealing a crawlspace barely wide enough to squeeze through. For a long moment, I hesitated. Every instinct told me this was madness, and yet I had been called useless too many times to turn back now. I dropped to my knees and slid inside. The space opened into a small hidden room. My flashlight beam cut through layers of dust, revealing shelves lined with objects I'd never seen before. Clay vessels etched with intricate designs, embroidered hides with fading but vibrant threads, and my breath caught an eagle feather headdress, pristine, glowing white in the beam. In the far corner stood a chest, solid wood, carved with the image of a wolf howling at the moon. My hands trembled as I brushed my fingers over the lid. "All right, Megan," I whispered to myself. "This is it." The hinges squealed as I lifted it open. Inside lay bundles of papers bound in leather, their edges yellowed with age. On top rested a thick journal, its cover cracked but intact. I flipped it open, and there it was, ink-faded but legible. To my granddaughter, Megan Sullivan. If you are reading this, it means I trusted you to find what others were too blind to see. I gasped, nearly dropping the book. My name written decades before I was even born. The next lines blurred as tears welled in my eyes. "This house is not your punishment. It is your inheritance, the heart of what I could never reveal to the world. Protect it, learn from it, and never, ever let greed destroy it." I sat back on the dusty floor, the weight of his words pressing on me. All my life, I'd been told I was weak, worthless. Yet, here, in this crumbling house, my grandfather's voice reached out across time, telling me the exact opposite. I wasn't useless. I was chosen. I hadn't slept much after discovering the hidden room. I sat hunched over the journal until dawn, tracing every word my grandfather had left me. For the first time in years, I felt seen, truly seen. But the fragile sense of pride shattered when I heard tires crunching outside. A sleek black SUV pulled up in front of the house. Even before the door slammed, I knew. Lucas. He strolled up the porch with that same smug expression he wore at the lawyer's office. "So, this is the palace you inherited?" he sneered, glancing around at the sagging roof. "Fitting, really. What are you doing here?" I asked, hugging the journal to my chest. "I heard rumors," he said, stepping inside uninvited. "About some treasures you found. Artifacts, documents, who knows? Word travels fast when you don't know how to keep secrets." I stiffened. "They're not yours," Lucas chuckled. "Not mine? Megan, everything in this family eventually falls into my hands. You think Grandpa actually meant for you to handle anything valuable? No. He gave you this dump as a joke. Hand over the papers, and maybe I'll let you keep the shack." I shook my head, voice firm despite the tremor in my chest. "No." He left them to me. His words, his trust were clear. Lucas's smile thinned. "Do you even hear yourself? You've never run a company, never managed a dime beyond your paycheck. You're going to ruin whatever's in those papers. Give them to me, and I'll take care of everything. You'll even get an allowance. Isn't that what you've always wanted?" Something snapped inside me. "An allowance? I'm not your pet, Lucas. I'm your sister. And for once, I'm not stepping aside." His eyes narrowed, sharp and calculating. "You're making a mistake. You can't fight me." "I don't need to fight you," I said, gripping the journal tighter. "I just need to stand my ground." Lucas took a step closer, looming. "You think this rotten house will protect you? You think a dead man's scribbles matter more than me? Face it, Megan, you're still useless." The word burned, but this time it didn't break me. I straightened, meeting his glare. "No, for once, you're wrong. Grandpa didn't see me as useless. He chose me. And if that means standing against you, then so be it." We stared at each other, the silence so sharp I could hear the wind whistle through the broken window. Then Lucas smirked again, though the humor didn't reach his eyes. "You'll regret this," he muttered, turning toward the door. "You always do." I stood frozen until the sound of his SUV faded down the gravel road. My knees trembled, but I didn't collapse. For the first time in my life, I hadn't let Lucas bulldoze me. I locked the hidden room tighter than before, whispering to the darkness, "I won't let you down, Grandpa." 2 days after Lucas's visit, I was repairing a cracked window when I heard the rumble of another car outside. My stomach twisted. When I peeked out, my worst fear came true: my parents. Sarah stepped out in her fur-trimmed coat, Daniel right behind her, both wearing expressions of disdain as if the air here offended them. "Megan," my mother said sharply, not even offering a hello. "We need to talk." I crossed my arms. "Let me guess you're here because of Lucas." My father's jaw tightened. Your brother told us you're hiding valuable documents. If that's true, then you need to hand them over before you do something reckless. I forced a laugh, though my hands trembled. Reckless? The only reckless thing is how easily you trust Lucas with everything. Don't start, my mother snapped. Lucas has always been capable. You, on the other hand, you barely manage your own life. Her words hit like stones, but this time I didn't shrink. You've been saying that my whole life. Maybe that's why Grandpa chose me instead. He knew I'd be the one to protect what mattered. My father stepped closer, his voice rising. Protect? You think a rundown shack and a stack of old papers are more important than the estate Lucas now controls? Don't be foolish, Megan. I'm not being foolish, I shot back. My chest burned with anger. For once, I'm not backing down. Grandpa trusted me. If you can't see that, then maybe you never really saw me at all. The silence after my words was heavy. My mother's eyes narrowed, glittering with cold fury. So this is how you repay us? By turning against your own family? I bit my lip hard, fighting tears. Family? You turned against me the moment you called me useless. All I ever wanted was your belief. But since you can't give me that, I'll find strength somewhere else. My father shook his head, disgust etched into every line of his face. You'll ruin everything. Mark my words, Megan. You'll end up with nothing. Then at least it'll be nothing I chose, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. For a long moment, we stared at each other, a battlefield carved out of silence. Finally, my mother scoffed and turned back to the car. Let's go, Daniel. She'll learn the hard way. They left as abruptly as they'd come, gravel spitting under their tires. I stood on the porch, heart pounding, fighting back sobs. Yes, I was alone. But for the first time, I realized being alone was better than being invisible. The letter arrived on a gray morning, slipped under the broken doorframe. I tore it open and felt my stomach drop. Lucas had filed a lawsuit, demanding the house, the documents, and everything my grandfather had left me. He claimed Grandpa had been confused, and that the real intent was to leave it all to him. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My parents' voices echoed in my mind. Useless, foolish, you'll ruin everything. But then I thought of Grandpa's journal, his handwriting spelling out my name decades before I was born. If you are reading this, it means I trusted you. I hired a lawyer, a sharp woman named Claire Matthews, who listened carefully as I told her everything. When I showed her the journal and the deeds, she nodded firmly. This is solid. We'll fight. The day of the hearing, the courthouse buzzed with tension. Lucas arrived in a tailored suit, flanked by my parents, who looked at me as if I were a criminal. I walked in clutching the journal, my knees weak but my heart steady. Inside the courtroom, the judge, a stern woman with silver hair, called us to order. Lucas's lawyer went first, his voice smooth as silk. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. My client, Lucas Sullivan, was the rightful heir to his grandfather's fortune. The house in Colorado was mistakenly assigned to Miss Megan Sullivan, who lacks the competence to handle the significant historical and financial value tied to the property. We ask the court to transfer ownership. Lucas smirked across the aisle, his eyes gleaming with triumph. Claire stood next. Your Honor, what Mr. Sullivan calls a mistake is, in fact, a deliberate act of trust. Richard Sullivan left my client the Colorado property because he knew she would protect it. The documents hidden within, and the journal addressed directly to Megan, prove his intent beyond question. The judge frowned. Miss Sullivan, will you testify? I rose, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear myself. But when I looked at Lucas, his smug grin, the way my parents leaned toward him as if he were their only child, anger steadied me. Yes, Your Honor. I gripped the journal as I stepped onto the witness stand. My voice shook at first, but then it grew stronger. All my life, I've been told I'm useless, that I don't deserve anything. When my grandfather left me this house, I thought it was punishment. But when I opened that hidden room and read his words, my name, written years before I was born, I realized it was trust. He didn't want his legacy sold off for profit. He wanted it protected. And I will protect it, no matter what it costs me. Lucas shot up from his chair. This is ridiculous. She's delusional. Grandpa never trusted her with anything he trusted me. The judge silenced him with a raised hand. Mr. Sullivan, sit down. I continued, voice steady now. I'm not here to fight for money. I'm here because my grandfather believed I could do what no one else would, safeguard his legacy, and I refuse to betray that trust. Silence filled the room, heavy and electric. The judge leaned forward. I have reviewed the evidence. The journal, addressed specifically to Miss Sullivan, carries undeniable weight. Combined with the deeds, I find no grounds to question Richard Sullivan's intent. Lucas's face paled. My parents shifted uncomfortably. Therefore, the judge declared, gavel striking with finality, the property and all associated contents remain in the legal possession of Megan Sullivan. The sound echoed like thunder. My knees almost buckled, but this time from relief. Lucas turned on me, his eyes blazing with hatred. You'll regret this, Megan. You don't know what you've started. I met his glare, clutching the journal to my chest. Maybe I don't, but for once, I'm not afraid. As I walked out of the courtroom, the world felt different. I wasn't the girl my parents had scorned. I wasn't the sister Lucas could bully into silence. I was Megan Sullivan, chosen, trusted, and finally unbroken. The weeks after the trial passed in a blur. For the first time, the house felt alive. I patched the roof, scrubbed the walls, and opened the curtains to let light spill into rooms that had been cloaked in shadows for decades. With every nail I hammered, every broken board I replaced, I felt like I was rebuilding not just the house but myself. Neighbors from Cold Creek began stopping by, curious about the Sullivan girl restoring the old place. Some offered tools, others stories about my grandfather. I listened, soaking up every word, every memory. For the first time, I felt part of something bigger than my parents' scorn or Lucas's greed. One evening, I lit a fire in the old stone fireplace. The warmth spread through the room, dancing over the shelves where Grandpa's artifacts now rested safe, respected, exactly as he wanted. I sat on the worn rug, the journal open on my lap, rereading his words. This is not your punishment. It is your inheritance. Tears slid down my cheeks, but they weren't from sorrow. They were from pride. I whispered into the flames. Thank you, Grandpa. You believed in me when no one else did, and I won't let you down. My parents never called. Lucas disappeared into his own bitterness, but I no longer needed their approval. Standing on the porch at sunset, watching the mountains glow gold, I finally understood. I wasn't the useless daughter. I wasn't the forgotten sister. I was Megan Sullivan, the woman my grandfather chose to carry his legacy. And this crumbling house, once a symbol of rejection, had become my proof, my strength, my home.